Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos as always. Michael, the Week 18
Are you okay?
has come and gone.
Are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
There's such I can hear it in your voice. You're sad. I mean, you watched your ass kicking yesterday.
Now we have to go take out Tom Brady in the playoffs. I'm a little nervous, as I said earlier.
Oh my God! How's John Goulet and everybody there? I mean, Dave Ross must be committed to commit suicide. I mean, for people that at home that don't know this, everyone at VSiN, not everyone. A lot of the VSiN guys are Cowboy fans, like our man Femi here. And this was, to get your ass butchered like that is, I knew you were going to be a little somber today. You weren't going to be high on the hip here today. I could tell this one.
You know what? They went last year into the playoffs.
This has got a tone like when Tua failed that ticket. This has got the same tone. Elliot, do you hear the same tone in this? I hear the same tone. There's the same sadness that has rushed over my man here. Yes.
Well, I'm preparing myself for the impending doom of the Cowboys going one and done again in the playoffs. But last year in Week 18, they put up 51 points on the Eagles. Didn't mean squat in the wild card game against the Niners. So maybe we can reverse it. Them playing absolutely terrible can maybe give them some momentum heading into the postseason. But we'll get to that Cowboys game coming up in a little bit. We'll also get to the fallout from...
Get a handkerchief. Get a handkerchief so the tears, you can lower the tears.
We'll have it ready. We're going to get to the fallout from the Texans game, Texans-Colts, which ended up being one of the more electric games of the early window for the final week of the regular season. Of course, the head coach, Lovie Smith, fired Sunday night by Houston. We'll touch on all of that, but first we got to start on Sunday Night Football because that's what the people want to hear. They want to hear Sunday Night Football. Detroit Lions upset the Green Bay Packers 20-16, eliminating Green Bay from the playoffs. Seattle will go into the postseason as that number 7 seed. Everyone, I'm sure your mentions were blowing up during the game, especially in that fourth quarter. Everybody wants to know how Big Daddy's doing. You put out a tweet saying that Big Daddy was heading to Hawaii, so he's leaving the mainland. What's the update on Big Daddy?
It's a good thing. He cannot be accused. Big Daddy is on an airplane flying directly to Honolulu for a nice vacation, well-deserved. Mm-hmm. And this way he cannot be accused for anything that occurs in Green Bay, Wisconsin. If someone trips or falls down or breaks an elbow, he can't be accused of doing all this, although he wants somebody accountable. He's predicted this all year. Of course, it's easy to predict something's going to go wrong when that's all you do is predict something's going to go wrong. But he was sequestered at a Philadelphia airport last night, hotel, because he had a really early morning flight. Uh-huh. And so, he just saw this coming. And I think when I texted him to start off, I said, I think your boy LaFleur got a nice haircut today. He said, he's looking sharp. This will be a disaster, And then he's going crazy on the offensive game plan. Really enjoyed those red zone play calls LaFleur brought to the table. Really thought they were really good. And look, he is like a lot of Packer fans. He is sitting there saying, why? Like, I thought home field mattered. Right? How many more big games is LaFuck going to lose before somebody says, maybe there's a problem here? Okay, let's just go through it quietly. Tampa Bay, this is Big Daddy. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay, playoff game, home. Okay. San Francisco, playoff game, home.
Yep.
Detroit, playoff game to get in playoff, home. At what point does this guy have to have some accountability? Detroit. Now, I would say this. Detroit is not known as an elite defense. You would agree with this?
I would 100% agree.
They hold him to 4 for 12 on third down. In 2 games, he scored 25 points against Detroit. 25 points. The Carolina Panthers, who are sitting out of this, I think they scored 38 and ran and had almost 580 yards against them. I understand it was a different game. I get that. But at some point, what is the deal here, Fem? And Big Daddy wants answers.
I think he deserves answers. And I thought just from the get-go, the Packers, it seemed a little nervy. Now, I thought that maybe Detroit, if Green Bay got up on them early, they could maybe get Detroit reeling and going uphill to where they could pull away from this thing. But it felt like they just kept letting the Lions hang around. And then ultimately in the second half, the Lions gained some control. They gained that confidence. and then really controlled that entire fourth quarter. But after the game, here's what Matt LaFleur had to say about the loss there with the Packers eliminated now from postseason contention.
Yeah, no, you got to give them credit. They came ready to play, and certainly, did more than what we did. And we had some things that some opportunities that we didn't capitalize on, and then we had some silly mistakes that certainly cost us. But again, you got to give them credit, and I feel for our locker room, I feel for our coaches and everybody, our fans that showed out tonight, and I just it wasn't enough. We didn't do enough.
Well, he feels bad at least.
Well, I mean, look, it certainly feels bad. But to me, like, this was a very winnable game. I felt like watching this that, again, I didn't think Goff was playing. I thought Goff was playing like the Goff for the table for two by the heater a little bit. I didn't think he was. Now, he made the great throw for the touchdown pass, and he made throws. But there was a lot of throws in that game where even Collinsworth was saying that, boy, he's just not throwing the ball very good, right? And it didn't seem like it. But I think a lot of this is going back to give Aaron Glenn credit. I mean, Aaron Glenn outcoached LaFleur. I mean, he just outcoached him. He doesn't have as many good players, but he outcoached him. And this is 2 games now. I mean, when you're 4 for 12 on third down, against them, you had 28 rushes for 103 yards in the game. Meanwhile, Carolina's running it up and down the field on them. I know it was a cold day. I understand that. I get all that. But to me, this is a game, like, how many more of these big games are you going to continue to lose? And everybody wants to blame the quarterback, but at some point, this is a 3-dimensional game. This is a 3-dimensional game. And I don't even think Detroit played their A game. I really don't. I don't think so. And I mean, the undisciplined nature of those of Walker that got thrown out of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that to me was embarrassing. I'm so happy the league threw his ass out of the game. I mean, can you imagine of all weeks to push a medical trainer, somebody coming trainer? Could you imagine that?
It's just ridiculous. And it's just,
I mean, it's inexcusable any week, but imagine this week with number 3 on the field. We're honoring this kid. We're honoring this kid because of the first responders are so incredible, and you're going to push the guy who comes out to help a kid on the field.
It's undisciplined.
I mean, to me, I watched this Packer team, in fairness to Big Daddy, like I'd never have seen it. Like everybody said, what was that tweet somebody said? You don't want to play the Packers come playoff time. I'm like, I don't see it. Like, I haven't seen it. Like, explain to me why you didn't want to play the Packers. Like, explain to me why. Because they beat Chicago? Because they beat the Rams? Because they beat Miami when Tua couldn't complete a pass in the second half? Because they killed Minnesota last week? I mean, like, tell me why you don't want to play them. Like, I never thought they were I thought Miami was going to blow them out of the building until the second half. Like, to me, they never, like, I know that I thought they were going to be a bad 7th seed. I really did. I don't think San Francisco was going to have a little bit of problem with them. I know Collinsworth was making a big deal out of that right tackle, Tom, how his foot, all that bullshit. Like, watch him get his ass kicked by Bosa the next week. That was going to be good. Remember? So, like, are you kidding me? Like, at some point, you got to sit there and say, when are we going to win a big game here? We got the best. If this kid retires, they won 2 Super Bowls as a franchise with Favre and Rodgers, and both those quarterbacks are in the top 100 players of all time in the National Football League.
And to our credit here on the podcast, we'll give ourselves a little pat on the back. We didn't second guess this whole Packers dangerous 7 seed thing. We first guessed this because I asked you the question. I was like, hey, if the Packers get into the postseason, do you think they could be dangerous? And you didn't even hesitate. You said, no, there's no way because this team has way too many flaws. And it starts with the head coach and what he does. Undisciplined. It's an unserious game plan that they put together, and they just had a lack of execution there. But I don't want to let Rodgers off the hook either, because we always say on the motto of this podcast, if we see something, we have to say something. He wasn't good last night, and especially in that second half, some of those throws that he was making down the field. Kirby Joseph picked him off twice. One of them was called back for the illegal hands to the face. Now, I know some guys had drops. Romeo Doubs, his drops has kind of been plaguing him his rookie season. But for Rodgers, especially to his standards, in a big game at home, I don't think he played well at all. I thought he was pretty bad last night.
Yeah, I don't think he played well either, but I think he's going to take all the blame. Of course, when LaFleur was 13-3, he took all the credit. The guy was MVP 2 years in a row. But let's be fair here. Rodgers hasn't been the same player this year that he was last year. He averaged 6.8 yards per attempt. He can't get the ball. He only threw 26 touchdown passes. He threw way more interceptions. I think the whole problem with the Packers has been the design problem from the start of the year, that they relying on these rookies to come in and help them at receiver, thinking they could run Devontae Adams' offense when that's not what they can run. Like, they had to change who they were as a football team. They never did. They never were good enough on defense. You know what their plus minuses and point differential was for the final for the year? They gave up 371. They scored 370. Is that like a really good team?
Nope.
How long did they go with Rodgers as the punt returner before they went to Nixon? Like, how long did they go with that? Like, at some point, don't you sit there and say, here's what I have, here's the strength of my team, here's what I'm going to do? I never got that sense from them. And look, let's be clear here. They didn't play exactly the hardest schedule. They played, the NFC East, which even though they got the Giants, 2 teams going to the playoffs, they weren't great. They played the AFC East. They have 2 teams going, which were not great, right? Like, it wasn't like they played this hard schedule.
It really is mind-numbing what the Green Bay Packers did. The setup was right there for them. Everything over the last 3 weeks broke their way to try to sneak into the playoffs. They controlled their own destiny. They were the only team in the postseason. It was them in New England heading into yesterday, controlled their own destiny, both of which lost. But Green Bay 8-9 is how they end the season. And a lot of the questions now, Michael, now that we're heading into the offseason, are going to be about Aaron Rodgers and if he's going to come back, is he going to retire? A lot was made on the broadcast last night about how he told Jameson Williams, hey, I'm going to hang on to this jersey. I don't want to swap my jersey. And it felt like he was kind of taking in the moment when he was walking off the field with Randall Cobb there in the final moments. Do you think that we see Rodgers back? Because his cap hits are pretty outrageous here. Because if he plays, it's $31.6 million, which is expected from a quarterback. If they were to trade him or if he retired, he's $40.3 million. If they were to cut him, I don't think that's ever going to happen. It'd be a $99.7 million cap hit. Do you think we see Rodgers as the quarterback for the Packers to start next season?
I think that what he certainly has, I think there's obviously, you got to see the contract, right? And so there's a potential, I think there's a potential out in the contract for 2024, right? So that's the thing that you've got to really understand is what does that out? Option bonus to be exercised, and that's got more money in the guarantees. So I think there's a lot of conversation about that, if they can get out of the deal or if he can get out of the deal. And I think that's what's going to happen. And, and then I think that there'll be a dead cap hit of $24 million if he opts out after the 24 season, but 23, he's still locked in. So he can't opt out until 20. This doesn't really matter until 24. And he's got enormous amounts of guarantee in there. So how does he get out of that? He's got a 23 option bonus at 58.3 guaranteed. Must be exercised between March 1st and then. So, how does he get out of that? How did they get away from that?
I don't think you can. I think he's going to be their guy. And
why would he retire?
Yeah.
Why would he say, okay, I don't want this money, I'm going to retire? Why would he?
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
And where are they going? Jordan Love?
Well, word on the streets, at least from what I was reading up on, was that Jordan Love might ask for a trade this upcoming offseason because he wants to play.
Sure he does. But here, this goes back to the same. It goes right back to, Mr. Murphy, the president of the team. He's built this, right? He hired LaFleur to be the offensive coordinator, right? So he subcontracted that out. He's got Gutekunst over there to be the player personnel director, carry the title of GM. Everybody reports to him, and this is what he wanted. And so he subcontracted. There's no leadership in the building about, okay, here's where we're going, and this is why they have this up and down. Mm-hmm. He thought LaFleur was this up-and-coming offensive coach. Yeah, it's easy to be up-and-coming offensive coach when you got Aaron Rodgers.
After the game, Rodgers was asked about potentially retiring and his decision and what he wants to end up doing in 2023. He said, quote, I'm not going to hold him hostage. So he knows that, hey, there's a timeline with the way the offseason works. So I'm assuming that means that he will let them know at least at some point in February or definitely before the new league year begins in March. But asked about hypothetically retiring and walking away from a guaranteed $58.3 million. He said, quote, "Money is energy, and I have made a ton of it, and I'm very thankful for this organization, the generational wealth that they've offered me." So I don't know if money is going to factor in, but money always has to play a factor, I would think. But I think he just returns, though. It just makes too much sense.
Well, I think the hardest part here about Green Bay is this, right? So Brady goes to New England, and the franchise is worth X, and by the time he leaves, it's worth X squared, X squared, X squared, right? Mm-hmm. And so Green Bay, how do you put the value on what he's enhanced the franchise for? Because the franchise is owned by the town. So there's really no institutional wealth that has been accumulated by the owner of the Packers, right? Whereas Kraft, certainly between Belichick and Brady and all the success, that value of the franchise has gone up because of that success. Now, Kraft can certainly take credit for it. He owns the team. But there is that value that goes in there. Here you can't quantify that value. So even though, money isn't important, there is kind of what he's been able to brand that team and make that team wealthier. That's worth something as well.
It's going to be an interesting offseason for the Green Bay Packers once again, just like it was last year, with the season ending with another home loss in a win and in type of situation. But on the other side, before we move on, Michael, we got to credit the Detroit Lions and their ability to play hard and to play physical and be tough in this football game, because a lot of people thought that, hey, maybe the Lions could be dejected after what we saw happen in the Seahawks and Rams game. I thought that, it's a tough situation. I get it. They've been preparing all week long of, hey, if we win, we can get it in the playoffs. And then you hear 40, 35 minutes before kickoff that you've been eliminated. Any human naturally will have a little bit of a letdown. But for those guys to come out and still play the way that they played, and Dan Campbell, that head coaching staff, to go from 1-6 to 9-8, a hell of a way to end the year for the Detroit Lions, too. We've had some things to say about Dan Campbell over the season, and some of the in-game decision-making I think is a little questionable. But we got to tip our cap to Dan Campbell and what he did over this past 6-7 weeks for the Lions.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't. I mean, last night, he calls a timeout after a 6-yard gain and doesn't call a timeout after a 20-yard gain. It blew my mind.
A little questionable.
But I agree. I agree. I mean, sometimes his in-game management, but I think Ben Johnson has done an incredible job. I think you got to give Aaron Glenn a lot of credit for getting the defense to play at a much higher level. They changed it out. It was horrible in the beginning of the year, and it got better, and the players improved. So you can't deny that. I think there's no doubt. I think anybody who didn't think Detroit was going to compete has never been in a locker room before. Like, anybody who thought that Houston was going to lay down had never been in a locker room before or been in an organization before. And I wrote about it on Friday, and I said it. I wrote it there. I wasn't second-guessing. I said it. There was no chance of that. Like, Dan Campbell was going to use this game to build to 2023. He was going to build to the future. Mm-hmm. And since he was coming back as the coach and he stood there, he was building for this. And Ben Johnson, who was the offensive coordinator, is building his future for this game. And the same with Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, for this, will get head coaching interviews. He'll get head coaching interviews for sure. Because here he is. He took over a defense that wasn't very good. He kind of improved it, and he held the – I mean, those are big caveats to go with. So for anybody to think that Detroit was going to lay down, like that line at 4.5, I thought was ridiculous. I thought it was a field goal game. Did I think the Packers could win? Yeah, sure, I thought they could. Mm-hmm. I was a little hesitant in game watching Goff throw the ball because I didn't think he threw it very well. But, I mean, they made enough plays, and the Packers are still, for all this conversation of they're scary, they can't play defense. They can't stop. When Detroit got the ball back on the interception, they couldn't stop them. I mean, they ran the ball right down their throat.
Well, last night on the broadcast, I learned that Joe Barry's defense hasn't gotten as much credit as it should have had, is what I learned.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Well, last week we heard that Deshaun Johnson was the key to Baltimore's offense. He's a free agent today. I just so you know that. Like, he's a free agent today. Like, this is just unbelievable. Like, nobody explains the game. I mean, it was going crazy on Saturday afternoon. Millie made me have to watch. Millie made the sound on, and I'm watching. I'm listening to the game, and I'm saying, this guy. Yeah, he's watching a completely different game than I'm. Everything he said was complete opposite. It's just like nobody. I wish we would teach some of these TV announcers pass protections. Like, I wish somebody would have a clinic and teach them what is pass protection. Like, what are they doing? Not everything's a blitz. Not everything's zero pressure. Not everything's man-to-man. Like, if we could just teach them some of this. It's just like, why do we have to give a clinic after every play on what happened on the play? Why can't we talk philosophically? Like, I'll give you an example. Tennessee versus Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. To me, that game was really about Tennessee's only good runs came when Tennessee was in nickel, when they were in 11 personnel, and Jacksonville matched them 2-11. Okay? And then they were able to run the ball. When Jacksonville was playing base against 12, there was no runs. And so eventually when Tennessee tried to get to 11 to run it, Jacksonville played base against it. They threw a couple bubble screens, but that was the game in the game, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to know about. We want to know the game within the game. And, we never get that. We just get we get the breakdown of the play, which is wrong most of the time. And, and they just start talking. It's like we're not educating the viewer. We're not educating the fan. I mean, at least last night they mentioned when they jumped off sides to create the extra down, Collinsworth kind of came in with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff that we hear on some of these broadcasts.
But think about it, Femi. At 3:27 to go in the game. Okay, Rodgers throws the bad interception. All right, you got the ball. You got to get a chance to get it back. They come out, they throw it. They win the game there. They get 3 first downs. See, to me, at that point, at 3:27 to go, if I was producing a TV show, and I'm not, I would have, Detroit needs 3 first downs to win the game. They need to run 12 plays or 14 plays, whatever it is. Like, we have all these analytical, we talk analytics all the time, and yet we don't put analytics up there to teach the fans. And then they call that play on 2nd and 17, which is a hell of a call. It was a little bit like the same call they made against the Jets. The tight end under. They called the right play at the right time.
Yeah, that was a gutsy play there, that hook and ladder that set them up for your favorite third and manageable. And then they were able to go and convert on 4th down. And I thought their effort last night was best summed up in the tweet from Kirby Joseph, who picked off Aaron Rodgers. He tweeted after the game, "If we're not going, y'all not going either. I don't care." And that was their mentality. Yeah. The whole game, it was their mentality.
And look, I was at Oakland in 1999. We played in Kansas City. Kansas City had a chance to go to the playoffs. They got up on a 17-0. It was a 1:00 game, and we stormed back. And Joe Nedney made a field goal to win the game at the end of the game. And that game propelled us to the 2000 season, where we actually were in the conference championship game. That's the game Rich Gannon got hurt by Saragusa, laid on top of him and hurt his shoulder, and we lost the game. Baltimore went on to win the Super Bowl. But these games propel you for the future. Like Carolina beating New Orleans, how, I don't know. I watched that game entirely. If you bet New Orleans in that game, you still don't know how you lost that bet. But that'll help you propel to the next year. People lose sight of that because they're never in the locker room.
We just see things week to week. That game, though, Lions and the Seahawks, we saw earlier that because Detroit got eliminated before they could win that game against the Green Bay Packers. The reason why they were eliminated is because the Seattle Seahawks beat the Los Angeles Rams 19-16 in overtime. This was a close one, a little bit tilting if you were a Rams bettor on the money line. So, Michael, I bet Rams plus 6.5, and I also put a little bit on the money line because I thought the Rams were going to be live to win that game, similar to kind of Detroit. It's like, hey, division rival. I think they're going to put a good foot forward and try to play spoiler here. And watching that game, I was like, man, the Rams could have easily won that game. A couple of miscues, and then Seattle made some timely plays. Geno Smith, that touchdown pass to Tyler Lockett was an amazing pass. But Seattle survived, and they kept their playoff hopes alive, and Detroit did them the favor. So the Seahawks have punched their ticket as the 7th seed.
Yeah, I mean, good. I mean, Pete Carroll's team just kept playing. I mean, they were horrible on 3rd down. They're 1 for 11 on 3rd down. But thank God, I mean, Baker Mayfield can't make them. I've seen enough of Baker Mayfield to say
it's over.
I mean, this whole idea that you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, it's over. I mean, he can't even complete a simple pass. The interception in overtime was as bad as it gets.
It's embarrassing.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrible. And I mean, imagine he was the first pick overall in the draft. I mean. That's so. Every time I watch it, and I was on record as saying it. Like, I love during that college season, I liked Baker Mayfield a lot. I did, And when I saw him play against Georgia, when Georgia rushed him inside, I'm like, nope, this ain't going to work. And then he went to Cleveland and all this, and everybody, Baker Mayfield progressive commercials and all this bullshit. I mean, if Sean McVay thinks that he can turn him, there's no chance. But, I mean, credit Seattle. They hung in there. They made enough plays. I mean, they missed the field goal. They kind of over it. They had every opportunity to win it at regulation. I didn't think that was a personal foul call on. It was bad, on Ramsey. I thought that was a horrible call, but, the guy made the call. And, I thought it was to me, he was still in bounds, but they did enough to win the game and give him credit. I mean, I was so nervous for that Survivor guy. He had Seattle, he almost lost it.
Yeah, that was insane. Because we saw the other guy lost it in the Colts-Texans game, went with Indianapolis. And then the last person, so the first person had Jacksonville from Saturday night. Already
that was
had
lucky.
It was very lucky. I mean, if not for that strip sack, who knows how that game ends up. So they already had the $2 million, and then they get to the $3 million once the Colts guy loses. And then that final person sweating out that Seahawks-Rams game, doinking the field goal to end regulation. And then, I mean, when Baker throws that pass to Van Jefferson, it's like, oh my God, are they going to connect on this? And then, of course, Quandre Diggs comes in, makes a great play. The ball was hung up there for a million years, but Quandre Diggs did make a great play to pick that off and turn the tide back in Seattle's favor, because once the Seahawks didn't do anything on that first possession in overtime, I thought, ooh, buddy, this is going to be a sweaty one there. But, Seahawks do get that victory.
I mean, that might be the last game we see Sean McVay. I mean, he's in complete Dick Vermeil mode. He's in complete Dick Vermeil mode. I need time. I got to think about it. And, I mean, he certainly – look, it's hard. Being a head coach in an NFL team is not an easy job. Everything, especially when you run everything, especially when you're in control of everything. And his future, when you look at this team, you're like, where are we going? I know Matthew Stafford says he's coming back, but is he coming back? I mean, what are we doing? I think it's no draft picks. I mean, that's a funny thing. I mean, everybody thinks if McVay leaves, then the Rams could get Sean Payton, or they could get, or Denver could get. Well, you're going to have to compensate New Orleans, right? Mm-hmm. And both those teams don't have anything to compensate them with.
It is interesting because Mike Florio put out the report that the reason why McVay might step away is because he doesn't want to be a part of the rebuild. Because he knows where this thing is headed for Los Angeles. And like you mentioned, the no draft picks. You got a lot of money tied up to Stafford, Kupp, Donald, Ramsey. Those are your core four players there. Do you think that McVay ultimately steps away? Like, do you think that he takes like the gap year type of thing?
I do. I think he takes it. I think he goes into TV and he goes and destroys his life. I think the fact that his wife and the whole Ukraine thing has weighed on him. I think it's been hard. I think it's a huge mountain to climb. I mean, when you make an organization off solution based decisions. So there's two ways you go organizationally. Solution based is doing what's best for us right now. Mm-hmm. Sustainable based is doing what's best for us today and tomorrow, but valuing some to tomorrow, right? So leaving it a little bit better than when you inherited it. Like leaving you better than when you inherited it. Like if Belichick walked away from the Patriots today, they're better than when he inherited them in 1999. Now, are they a Super Bowl team? No, I'm not saying that. But he's moved them to a better place. Whereas the Rams, Sean went solution-based. And part of that was because they had this new stadium. They're in Los Angeles. They needed to do all this, right? But at some point, you got to pay the tax bill. You're going to have to pay the credit card. Mm-hmm. And this is going to require a ton of energy and a ton of divergent thinking to get this back. And it's going to require a coaching staff that's going to be willing to kind of develop a lot of young players and suffer through some bumps.
I guess looking back on it, though, I don't blame them for doing it. I mean, you get a Super Bowl out of it, and they were competitive for many years under Sean McVay, only missed the playoffs twice. And ever since he stepped in there in 2017, he brought life to that franchise and that organization as a leader, as a head coach, as a play caller. So even though it's going to be some hard times over these next couple years, I'd do it all over again, I'm sure. And I'm sure they would as well.
It's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot of energy. Yeah. And so that energy, do you have that energy? Do you have that 4 o'clock in the morning energy to get up and go do it? Do you have that ability to be a general manager and the head coach? Do you have all those? It's going to take a lot.
Yeah, well, good thing they won that Super Bowl last year. That's all I'll say. That Lombardi Trophy will be shiny and nice. They can look at that whenever they have the issues coming up in the future here. Michael, let's take our first break. On the other side, we'll get to what we saw in Indianapolis last night with Houston Texans firing Lovie Smith. All right, we'll get into the rest of the AFC playoff implications and what the results were in just a bit here. But, Michael, we got to start with the Houston Texans. Now, a lot was made about this game. Houston, if they lose, they clinch the number 1 overall pick. However, Lovie Smith and the Texans fought till the bitter end, and they came back to beat the Indianapolis Colts 32-31. A dramatic game in the witching hour. My eyes were glued to it. A lot of eyeballs were glued to it. But what did you make of this game? And this one, like you said, you wrote about it. That hey, Houston's going to continue to fight hard, and they did that, even though it did cost them the number 1 overall pick.
Well, I mean, first of all, let's talk about that. I mean, I missed this. Is Troy Aikman in the draft this year? Is Peyton Manning in the draft this year?
Not last I checked.
I'm confused. Is that who's in? I mean, I heard 2 guys on TV the other day. You know, Bill Berman, my man next to me here. He heard 2 guys. He told me this. I didn't hear it. He said he had 2 guys on TV talking about Bryce Young and how Bryce Young was dynamic and he's the greatest thing ever since sliced bread. Then they went to Stetson Bennett. They said, you know, Bennett's really improved. He was probably a free agent. Now he's moved himself in a mid-round pick. But, you know, size is always going to be a problem for Stetson Bennett. Okay, that's true. Mm-hmm. What about Bryce Young? 189 pounds, under 6 feet. I didn't know Doug Flutie was back in vogue. I didn't know this. I missed that memo. I was out of touch. I didn't know that the under 6 foot quarterback, under 200 pounds, is back in the world. I missed that memo. I don't understand it. I think Bryce Young's a fabulous college player. Mm-hmm. This whole idea that the franchise is going to fall apart if we don't get him is a little bit naive by people. Like, to me, so I don't think, in talking to a lot of people that work on the draft full time, I don't know if there's a consensus number 1 quarterback. Is it Stroud? Is it Bryce Young? I mean, I think everybody thinks the kid from USC, if he were able to come out, which he's not, he would be the first pick.
Yeah.
Okay, so So I know Chicago was the first pick. They're not going to pick a quarterback. They're going to try to tease everybody to get up there. But at some point, people are going to say, "Wait a minute, do I get a franchise court? Do I get a top 5 player if I go that?" I don't know. All right, let's go back to Lovie. To me, this was easy to see. It was as easy as playing on the – first of all, let's start with the Houston Texans. There's complete dysfunction within the building. There is no alignment. There has never been alignment in that building for 2 years, right? Nick's from the Patriot school. And so he's hired 2 coaches who would be as different as the Patriot school is as Tokyo would be to Vienna. I mean, it's just completely different, right? Each perfectly works in their own environment, but it's just completely different. Now, I don't know if the owner told him to hire Culley or if the owner told him to hire Lovie, but I do know they wanted to hire Flores last year. The lawsuit comes up, and then all of a sudden, no. And then they get in down that Josh McCown road, and they go down, and they settle on Lovie. Who's there? Who they watched? Like, Nick watched Lovie work. He watched his defense. There's no way those 2 could ever be philosophically aligned, okay? Mm-hmm. So we know that. So there's a difference between alignment and being on the same page, right? You and I can be on the same page. We agree we're going to try to win, but being aligned on how we're going to do it is way different. And this is what's in Houston right now. There's no alignment there. And so this week, when anybody thought Lovie wasn't going to play to win, especially considering the guy's 27, 76, and 1 as a head coach over the last 8 years. He's going to fight. He's fighting for his job. So if Nick were to walk down to his office on Tuesday and say, "Hey, Lovie, you know, we can't miss Bryce Young. He's the greatest thing since Troy Aikman. We got to have him. And then, you know, I want you to lose. And then Monday and then Sunday night, after you lose, you're getting fired. Like, you're getting fired. Like, if you wanted the first pick overall in the draft, fire Lovie a week ago. Fire Lovie 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Right? So they obviously. So to me, that's the problem. The head coaches like Lovie, they thinking only in the moment. They want to win the game in the moment. Whereas the general manager, he can't come in there and say, "I don't want this." You say, "Well, And that's why. So to me, when I saw them go up 10-0, I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I wrote about. I think winning matters for Smith, which then allows him to walk into the owner's office, proclaim over the last 5 weeks his team is 2-3 with a chance to beat Dallas and Kansas City. He can sell improvement, hoping not to be another one and done. Well, they already made their mind up. They were firing him. The owner was at the game. They already made their mind up. They were firing him, win, lose, or draw. So this win had nothing to do with it, but they weren't going to stop him from winning.
Here's what Lovie had to say when he was asked about his decision to go for the win at the end of the game and the whole tanking situation that ultimately cost them the number 1 overall pick.
All right, this is the option that I had. So you're saying, hey, guys, playing this last game, all that you've been working for all your life, you play to win, forget that, lose the game on purpose. I think that would be a hard one to get by. They wouldn't expect me to say that. I didn't. What we work each week, our game plan has been to win the game. It's kind of simple as that. And that's what we followed through on the day.
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry there, Michael.
I mean, it took a miracle, too. I mean, 4th and 20. I mean, it took a miracle. I feel bad for the guy who took Houston in the Survivor, who took the Colts in Survivor. Yeah. But, I mean, look, when you're betting with Saturday in the park, God bless you. God bless you. I mean, he might still get the job Saturday in the park, and that's a whole other conversation.
No,
he still might. Trust me, he still might. No, I think there's a real possibility, Fem. I think there is. I think did you listen to his comments after the game yesterday?
No, what did he say?
Oh, he's like, well, it's going to get better. He was talking about the future. It's going to get better. We're going to get some things fixed around here. Okay, yeah, I'm sure you will.
Man. Sorry, Elliot.
I'm sure you will. I mean, Elliot, our producer on the show on Sunday, had it's the worst performance of an interim coach since 2009 who took over. Like, he didn't improve the team from the guy he took over from.
They were worse.
Of course they were. I mean, of course they were. But, but Indian, you talk about not being aligned. Indianapolis isn't aligned, nor will they be aligned. They may not be aligned because the owner isn't aligned. Again, when these owners are listening to different people and the people that they're listening to influence them, you cannot have alignment. You cannot have alignment. And that's a word we're going to use on the podcast for the next 6 months because most of these teams don't have alignment. The Jets have no alignment because their owner sees something that their head coach doesn't see. And we'll talk about that in another block. But to me, this is where it is. So Lovie winning there, I mean, that was a given. And at the end of the day, they have the second pick of the draft. Okay, so if they don't get Bryce Young, they get C.J. Stroud. I mean, look, the Chargers sat there and just took Herbert. How'd that work out for them?
It's pretty damn good.
That's what cracks me up. Everybody on Twitter yesterday was talking about, oh, my God, they blew their chance to get a franchise quarterback. Oh, my God, they did that. How could they be so stupid? Did anybody look where Mahomes went in the first round?
Wasn't in the top 5.
It wasn't the first pick overall.
No.
Did anybody? I mean, I think Deshaun Watson's playing like crap, but there was a time he played good. Did anybody look where Watson went in the first round? How about Lamar Jackson? Has anybody looked at what he went in the first round?
Yeah.
Like I don't understand it. It blows my mind. Oh my God, they lost the first pick. How could they be so stupid? Well, I could have promised you they were going to play it. And who is the first pick? All right, so I get C.J. Stroud if you take Bryce Young. Okay, great. I mean, Detroit took Hutchinson and Jacksonville took Walker last year. I think they both got good players.
Mm-hmm.
Did they get did they get Bruce Smith? I don't know. I don't think they did. I don't think either guy is going to be as great as Bruce Smith was, right? Did they get Lawrence Taylor? I don't think so. I mean, remember, Lawrence Taylor went 2. George Rogers went 1.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully the Cowboys got Lawrence Taylor and Michael Parsons. It's neither here nor there. But get this. Elliot just sent me this note, Michael. Since 2010, there have been 9 interim head coaches that have coached 8 or more games in a single season. Jeff Saturday did that coaching yesterday, and he is the only one of the 9 to not lead the team to a better record in the interim than the coach that they replaced.
I mean, look, I don't know what to say. I don't have a grudge against Jeff Saturday.
He seems he's great on TV.
I'm not jealous. He's a head coach. I just know this. I can't go up and Big Daddy's daughter, who's a doctor. I can't go take over for her one day while she misses work. I just can't do it. Alyssa's going to have to. She can't miss a day of work. I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to fill in for her. Even if I'm talking to the head of the Temple Hospital and telling her all the things that's wrong, I can't do it.
You're not going to be the interim doctor?
No, I'm not going to be the interim doctor.
On the Houston side of things, though, last note on this, are you surprised that Caserio is safe? Because there were some reports that were surfacing Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, that Caserio's job was also in question, but we saw Cal McNair put out the quote that, hey, Caserio is in this, and we're going to work together to try to find the next head coach.
Well, I think, there's two ways to view this, right? If Nick is safe, then basically what's happened is the owner said you should hire Lovie. And even though he protested, he said, okay, even though he said, hey, look, I don't agree, but if you want me to hire him, we'll hire him. And so maybe that's what happened. And if it's not his guy, then he could say it. So I don't know. I mean, to me, most general managers, you don't get a third term at the bat. You don't. Mm-hmm. But there must be unique circumstances. Now, Easter, they let him go. And I think Jack was the one pushing for McCown. I think this will be Brian Flores' job if he wants it, and if they can get over the lawsuit and all those things. I think Flores should be the head coach here. Flores is too good of a coach to not be a head coach.
100%.
He's too good of a coach to not be a head coach.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with some of the head coaches that we see running around on the sidelines these days. I mean, he should be a head coach. And Pittsburgh was smart to pick him up on their staff, but Flores should be a head coach in this league. Let's stay in the AFC South, though, Michael. Saturday night, Duval County. Fun game, I thought, just from a strategy standpoint, and just seeing Tennessee put forth a fantastic effort, and we expected nothing less. It's a Mike Vrabel coach team, but the Jacksonville Jaguars win the game 20-16, winning the AFC South for the first time since 2017. What did you make of this game here? It really flipped in that fourth quarter, I thought, when the Jags outscored them 10 points to none. The strip sack fumble returned for a touchdown being the biggest play of the game.
I mean, they could only hide the sins of their team for so long in Tennessee. I mean, they just couldn't, they got every run they had out of nickel was good, and when they couldn't run it out of nickel, they couldn't put too much on Dobbs' plate. I thought he played as well. I mean, how bad must Malik Willis be? I mean, think about that. I mean, Malik Willis, he was there all year. I mean, Pickett was there all year. We're seeing guys come in off the street that play better than Malik Willis. I mean, they got to sign Dobbs for next year at least. I mean, Dobbs, he looked functionable in the game. I would have said, they're just not any good. Their tackles are terrible in Tennessee. I know they lost 3 offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. They're skilled players. They don't have a lot of skill guys. I thought Jacksonville was really fortunate. I thought that the game was a little – I didn't think Lawrence played at a high level. He missed some easy throws. Mm-hmm. They gained 212 yards of offense in the game. Think about that, Femi. They won with 212, and Tennessee turned it over twice. And when you do that, you're not going to win. And so, I mean, I think it's a learning experience for Jacksonville. I think that they got to raise their level of play, because this week will be a challenge, because this team can throw the football, and they're going to attack the weakness of Jacksonville, which is their secondary.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into some of these wild card matchups on Thursday. But yeah, that's one of the more fun matchups we have. Herbert, Lawrence, like these are guys that that have been touted as the next coming, and it's going to be really fun to see them in both of their playoff debuts. I think it's going to be a good matchup. I was
impressed with Jacksonville's ability to protect. I thought they did a really good job of protecting against Jeffrey Simmons and the guys up front. I thought they did a good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought Jacksonville, you mentioned too, when they went and stuck to that base when Tennessee was going to 11 personnel there in the run game. I thought Jacksonville in the run defense, at least in that fourth quarter, because I thought that those body blows were going to start to really accumulate, and then you'd see Henry, all of a sudden those 3-4 yard runs into being 7-8 yard runs consistently. I thought their run defense really, and Trayvon Walker, what he was doing on the edge as a defender in the run game, I thought was fantastic. Kudos to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Doug Peterson in his first year turning that whole thing around from the first overall pick to now winning the division.
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job, and they got better as the year went on. Give Mike call; they got better defensively, and Lawrence got better. I mean, look, I said this back in April. I said this back in September. They had the most talented team in the South. Yep. Now, would they play the most talented wise? I don't know, but they did, and Kirk has proven to be a good player. He got a lot of crap for the big contract, but he's been a really good player for them. And ATN, they couldn't run the ball. I mean, they couldn't run the ball at all. But they were able to come through, so give them credit. I think Peterson has done a great job. I think Peterson's done a great job. I think Campbell's done a great job. I think Mike Tomlin's coach of the year because where that team was and where it finished with a rookie quarterback is remarkable.
Well, let's get to that game. Pittsburgh, they beat the Cleveland Browns 28-14. Unfortunately, though, they didn't get the help that was required for them to get into the postseason. But Mike Tomlin now, he can say that he has never had a losing season. That was in doubt about a month ago. People said, is this going to be Tomlin's first losing season after 15 years of being at least 500 or better in every single season? Well, they finished the year 9-8. So Mike Tomlin continues to just win. Unfortunately, though, just too little too late for them after what we saw down in South Beach. But once again, a terrific job down the final month for the Steelers.
How is Mike Tomlin 9-8 and the Browns are 7-10? I mean, the Browns have a better team, right? They have a better team, but they didn't get better during the year, right? They made the quarterback decision to go with Brissett, and Watson was, to me, horrendous. I thought he was really bad. Never showed any level of improvement from week to week. I didn't think so. You know, the Browns defensively, they fired Joe Wood after the game yesterday. Mm-hmm. But if you're a Brown fan, you know, and you're 7-10, and Mike Tomlin with really a lesser team, you know, a lot of pieces in the back. Their defense doesn't, you know, they miss Watt for a long period of time. They can't really stop the run, but they did a great job. Credit. This is just why Pittsburgh they're aligned. There's an alignment within that building. They got that offensive line to improve. They got improvement in areas. They didn't, you know, they weren't, you know, Cleveland's 7-10, but nobody's going to mention they went for it at their own 25-yard line against the Chargers and didn't get it, and of course lost the game by 3 points. You know, that happened like LaFleur did that last night. Like I tweeted out, like, okay, the risk is that we're taking a risk for 3 more plays. The reward is 3 more plays. The risk is they get 3 points. How is that even possible? When you put it that way, Femi, how is that possible? The risk is giving up 3 points. The reward is 3 more downs. And this is what Cleveland did all year. I mean, so give Mike Tomlin credit. I mean, and they kicked their ass yesterday. I mean, they beat them by 14 points. And Cleveland really, I mean, Watson didn't play well. Their defense doesn't play well. They couldn't, I mean, Pittsburgh scored 28. They typically don't score that many points. They're playing with a rookie quarterback. I mean, think about that, Femi. They scored 28 points in the game. I mean, you have to go back to, well, they lost to Cincinnati at home. They scored 30.
Yeah.
That's the only game they scored more points than in this game.
I mean, just imagine if T.J. Watt stayed healthy this entire year. You'd think that Pittsburgh is in the playoffs.
I think
they might have challenged for the division.
I think Pittsburgh should be the 7th seed.
I wish.
And I think Detroit should be the 7th seed.
Same.
I think those two teams, by the tiebreakers, by all that. But to me, I think Pittsburgh going to Buffalo, I think, you know, would be a fun game to watch. I know Buffalo, they lost up there 38-3 earlier in the year, but that's a way different Pittsburgh team than it is now. Mm-hmm. And I think Detroit going out to San Francisco would give them more problems than Seattle. But the tiebreaker didn't go in their favor. And that's why we have 2 10-point dogs as 7 seeds. Think about it.
Yeah.
Both 7 seeds are 10-plus point dogs.
I thought we got the ass end of the variance in terms of the 7 seeds in both of the AFC and the NFC. I was hoping that we're either going to get like the Lions to get in and then get I really wanted Pittsburgh. Even New England, you could sell me on it because New England, they can craft ways to stay competitive in a game. And we'll get to the Dolphins in this next segment. But last point here is that just I thought we got a bad draw. Honestly, it's just based on it. We got a bad draw.
We did.
Like, I'm excited for the playoffs, but it's a bad draw.
The league thought we got a bad draw because they put it on Saturday. It's the first game. It's like if you're out shopping or if you're out doing books or if you want to do something else, go ahead. You know, when you come in at halftime, San Francisco will probably be up 20-3.
It's a bad draw, man. But it's a playoff, so I'll be excited. I'll watch it, of course, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, it was could have been better. But let's take another break. We'll get to the rest of the games on the other side. All right, Michael, let's get to the rest of Sunday's slate. Buffalo Bills, and what an atmosphere that we saw out there in Western New York. Obviously, Damar Hamlin's still in our thoughts as we're about a week removed from him going into cardiac arrest, but all signs point to him doing so much better than where we were just 6 days ago. And it was truly incredible. I had chills, honestly, watching it to start the game because Red Zone went to that game initially because they were showing all the reaction stuff. And for them to start off with a kick return touchdown. It was truly remarkable as they go ahead and beat the Patriots 35-23.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And I mean, look, the Patriots have no one to blame for this loss but themselves. I mean, you give up 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. That's 14 points. You know, they again, Buffalo was over 50% on third down. They couldn't stop them on third down. Now, I think to me that was interesting. We saw this before, Femi. Miami went up there and ran the football on Buffalo. They ran for 188 yards. New England was running the ball on them. They only ran for 107, but they were controlling the game, right? And Allen made a couple great plays, right? So everything that Belichick believes in and I believe in as how to win games fell apart. They didn't control the kicking game, give up 14 points there. They let the ball get thrown over their head twice. That's another 14. They scored 35 points, right? So you basically don't play what you have to do to win the game. And then, you know, they turned the ball over 3 times. Now, Buffalo turned it over 3 times. Josh Allen turned it over in the red zone again. And Allen's, to me, when you watch Buffalo now, Allen's, to me, I'm noticing it more and more. Allen's consistency of accuracy is not the same. He's at 63% accurate, but there's a lot of throws that, you know, that look like guys are open that he should make, you know, that I thought he would make. You know, when you look at it, now he's the same as last year. He's exactly the same last year in terms of accuracy, but back in 20, he was at 69%. So that's where he was second in the MVP voting.
Yeah.
So he's not, and I mean, think about this, Femi, the last 3 years, he has thrown 39 interceptions.
Jeez.
I mean, you know, we don't talk about it, but now he's averaged 36 touchdown passes over the last 3 years too. But he's thrown 39 interceptions. He can't do that if they're going to go all the way. They're not going to be able to go turn Kansas City over 3 times and beat them, or turn Cincinnati over. I thought to be watching Buffalo, I thought their defense was not very good. And I thought New England, Parker made plays. I mean, he throws a bad interception to Aguilar, but I thought New England was in this game. They had a chance. They really did.
Yeah, I thought the Buffalo's run defense has kind of been a concern, and it's gone back to even last year. I remember in New England in that windy game where Mac Jones only threw it 3 times, like they kind of pounded them on the ground. And New England's always kind of presented some tricky matchups in terms of what they can do in the run game. Now, if Buffalo gets a lead, that's when things kind of get out of hand when we see these two teams play. But yeah, Buffalo's run defense is a little bit concerning, I think. And they built their team, I feel like, so heavily to try to beat Kansas City, to where when they play these physical teams, it can get a little bit dicey. But this Bills team, they get the 2 seed, 35 points on the board against New England. I mean, it's nitpicking, but also it's nitpicking in the right way, because these questions are going to have to be answered in these next few weeks as they head into the postseason. Maybe not this weekend, but certainly after that. Let's go over to the Rocky Mountains, Michael. The Denver Broncos beat the Los Angeles Chargers 31-28. My man Russ, vintage Russ, out there cooking against that Charger defense. All jokes aside, though, what the hell were the Chargers doing?
I have no idea. I mean,
what was that?
I have no idea. My man Staley says, you know, what did he say here? Hindsight's perfect for everybody on outside, but games are not easy to manage. They're not, because you don't have too many players. We did it to our best ability. Hey, Staley, let me give you a clue. Mike Williams is the key to your success come playoff time. I said it before the show. You can ask Patrick Maher. I said it before the show. Keenan Allen, if you want to play him, go ahead. I love Keenan Allen, great player. But nobody's worried about Keenan Allen. Let Keenan Allen have 17 catches. Let him have 20 a game. Nobody cares. Mike Williams tilts the field. Mike Williams tilts the field. You lose Mike Williams, your offense isn't the same. You lose Aguilar, your offense isn't the same. Okay, so we're not dressing those 2 guys. So put 2 guys in there. Put 2 other guys in. You played how many games all year without Mike Williams? Yeah. Why can't you play one more? How about Bosa? We lose Bosa. We haven't had him most of the season. We need pass rush. We're going to need a rush against, Walker Little, and we're going to need a rush against the Jacksonville tackles. We need pass. We can't afford to lose him. Maybe we can't afford to lose Khalil Mack. Don't play him. There's 4 guys. We'll find guys to play because the game's meaningless. Somebody texted me this, and it was great. It was a perfect analogy. He said, what Staley did would be like if Andy Reid held a scrimmage on Saturday live and made the quarterback live in the scrimmage on his bye week.
Yeah. Pretty much.
That's what he did. And he's trying to defend it, saying, well, you can only manage so much. I mean, look, if he doesn't have Mike Williams and he loses that game, I mean, I don't know. If I were the owner of the Chargers, I would go berserk. Like, how you don't recognize that Mike Williams is the most important player besides Herbert on your team? To me, if you're going to draft, it's Herbert, Bosa, Mike Williams, Eckler. Those four.
It was malpractice, honestly, watching it. And I was surprised. Like, when that game flipped on, I'm like, okay, I'm sure the Chargers are going to probably play Chase Daniel and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, I see Herbert out there for the first series. I was like, okay, maybe they didn't have the feed
like they did with Brady.
Ravens,
maybe
Bengals,
they just put him out there for a series with Brady. Brady wanted to play, wanted to keep his streak alive of starting games. I get all that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Go do it, right?
Now go grab a ball cap after one series.
Yeah. Let's coach the team.
Yeah. It made no sense to me, especially when you saw the way that Ravens-Bengals game was going. And I think that game probably finished just moments before Broncos-Chargers got underway.
Yeah,
but still,
it was perfect. The league gave it to you. They said, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
You're the fifth seed. Congratulations. Pass around the hats. I mean, meanwhile, he's sitting here crying, saying, you guys don't know how hard it is to manage a game. Meanwhile, Dayball's over there. He's managing the game. He almost beat the Eagles at 22-16, a 16-point dog. I mean, think about it. He checkered Tyrod Taylor. He didn't go from Daniel Jones to Tyrod. He went to Davis Webb.
Somehow, some way, Brian Daboll was able to rest all of his key players, but we only get to dress 48 guys. So we got to play Herbert.
What a joke.
We got to play Mike Williams.
What a joke. What a joke. He's such a joke.
And hopefully they dodged the bullet, and because it sounds like
I hope so
it sounds
too.
like Mike Williams is going to be okay, because the reports that were coming out shortly after were bad. It was like, oh, he needed help just to get to the team bus and all this stuff.
Yeah, they said they had a hard time walking to the bus.
Yeah, but I think, though, from this morning, from what I've read, it sounds like he's going to be all right. They're expecting to have him this weekend. But, man, that could have been an absolute disaster if something went on. I mean, imagine if something happened to Herbert.
I know they haven't played great level of competition. I get that. I know that with the Chargers. But, they can do something that's hard to do. They have elite – with him on the field – he tilts the field, right? He gives them that big – nobody covers this guy. He's so big. He's so physical, And, I mean, I know on this win streak that, they beat Miami, not a great team. They beat Tennessee, not a great team. They beat the Colts Saturday in the Parks team, wonderful. And they beat the Rams. I get all that. They haven't really beaten a great team since they lost to the Raiders at home. But to me, if they got a chance to beat Jacksonville, and then if they beat Jacksonville, maybe they got to go to Kansas City, and they play well against Kansas City there. Every time.
Yeah. It's a 3-point game every time.
But they need Mike Williams to do it.
It's absurd what he was doing, and I thought it was just idiotic, and his explanation was even dumber after the game. So luckily they were able to dodge the injury bug there. Let's go over to our nation's capital, though, Michael. This game, idiotic in itself.
Get your handkerchief out.
This one was idiotic. Commanders, they beat the Cowboys. No,
why did the Cowboys even play this game?
I had no idea. I had no idea.
What were they doing out there with Dak running around? And I mean, I almost felt like I feel like they didn't want to play, but the coach wanted them to play. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say this to you: for all the shit that's going on, for all how bad they looked, right? Mm-hmm. That their offense gained 182 yards, and they couldn't stop the Sam Howell explosive Washington offense. I will say this: I will say this again. Kellen Moore, I know he's going to be the next greatest coach in the history of football.
Oh,
I know he's the smartest football guy. I know he's the greatest play caller. I know he's going to be a 5-time coach of the year as a head coach. I understand all that. I mean, there's nobody other than Don Shula that could even compete with Kellen Moore. But he's going to cost you.
Yep.
He's going to cost you.
Mm-hmm. I already see it.
Just telling you, he's going to cost you. You can say whatever the shit you want. The guy is playing Madden in the basement. He's playing Madden in the basement.
Yeah. I already see it coming. I mean, it's going back to last year. We talked about it this offseason when there was the list of top coordinators and the Cowboys had top
He's
two
the
in the
greatest
top
coach
five.
in football. Where do you see the broadcast on Saturday when we go Monday night? We'll hear about it, how brilliant he is.
Yeah,
there's nobody like him out there. He's a unique. There's no coach that's ever been like him before.
I'm glad I'll be working. I'm glad I'll be working during that game.
He's going to cost you. because he's playing Madden in the basement.
That offense yesterday, 2.8 yards per play, 182 yards. They had 11 drives, Michael, where they didn't get a first down against a Washington Commanders defense that did not have Jonathan Allen. They didn't have Cam Curl. They were down some key guys. Now, Chase Young and those guys were playing, but they were down some key guys since they had already been eliminated, and those guys were banged up. And to put that performance on tape, it was atrocious. I'm glad that I bet Washington plus 7.5 so that it didn't make me absolutely furious. So I won a little bit of money on it. But just the amount of Noah Brown targets that you're seeing, the offense, they can't get the ball to their best players. And I don't know if they were maybe they were using a day one install offense because they didn't want to put anything on tape. But if you don't want to put anything on tape for Tampa to see, why the hell are you playing your guys?
I'm just telling you, he's going to cost you.
And I'm going to get mad all of a sudden.
I'm just telling you. I mean, and look, their defense isn't elite. Let's be clear here.
Oh, it's falling
Their
off.
defense isn't elite.
Yeah.
They can't cover anybody.
Yeah.
Like now they're playing the Bucs, and so if they can take away Mike Evans on a deep throw, I mean, they got a chance because the Bucs don't really. They're off just because the Bucs the Bucs haven't turned. The Bucs are like the Packers. They haven't turned it around either. They're just in because they got in.
You don't want to see them.
If DJ Moore kept his helmet on, we Carolina would be in.
I already know it's going to be a close game because the Cowboys can't do anything and have it be easy. But, man, if they lose that game, heads will roll. And we'll preview that game this time next week because that is the Monday night game like Michael mentioned there. Real quick, Dolphins, though, they get into the playoffs.
Oh, my God. We got to talk about this on Thursday. First of all, this whole idea that the Zach Wilson thing's a joke. To not play him in this game, to go to Flacco, tells you how bad. I mean, like, how do you not do this? Now, I'm told.
Through hell or high water, man. Through hell or high water.
I'm told that, the owner wants LaFleur, Mike, not Matt. He wants him gone. And Saleh, I think, is digging in the trenches. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Because LaFleur, Saleh doesn't. I heard the owner wants to get rid of the entire offensive staff. And I don't know if you could blame the owner because here you are. You don't want to get rid of Zach Wilson. I'm not defending Zach Wilson at all. But if Zach Wilson led you back to a fourth quarter comeback against Miami, and now you're telling me he's not good enough to go down there and play, you went with Flacco, and you can't beat Miami with Skylar Thompson, and you have this elite defense? Like, tell me what I'm missing here, Femi.
Yeah, it's all sorts of bad. It's bad, and I hope I'm sure Skylar Thompson is a great kid. I'm sure he's a great person. I don't want to watch him in the playoffs. Honestly, I hope Teddy is healthy.
You think they're going to play Tua?
No, I don't. I think Tua's done. I think Teddy is our best hope here.
I think Teddy will play, but I can't imagine. I mean, and it's going to be. I checked the weather. It's going to be like 12 degrees up there.
Yeah, no, I think Teddy. I think he should be good to go. We'll see because he didn't play in a must-win game, so maybe it's 50-50. But I think that we'll see Teddy Bridgewater. Tua's done.
I guess you got. Tyreek Hill's got a bad ankle. I watched him limping all over the field.
He was going in and out of the lineup. But yeah, the Dolphins, they saved their season for at least a week because that would have been an all-time collapse had they not been able to make the playoffs after starting 8-3. They'll now go to Buffalo.
But think about this though, Femi. You're this great defensive coordinator. And all these Jet fans, they always give me shit about it, right?
Yeah.
Salah, he's great defense. We got a great defense. We have talent that other teams want. We have talent that other teams want. We're so talented. They let the Miami Dolphins rush for 162 yards. Now, Skylar Thompson, they're going to run the ball. That's all they can do. And yet they were able to run the ball. To me, there's something wrong here. And I'm saying what's wrong if you're a Jet fan is simply this, okay? Is simply this. The Saleh system is too generic. It's too basic. You got to change your portfolio. I mean, they have Skylar Thompson, who's never started a game or maybe one. 7th round picks, whatever he is. They gained 302 yards against this elite defense. They average 4.7 per play. You're starting Joe Flacco, an MVP of a Super Bowl, and you gain 187 yards. Now, say whatever you want, say, well, we miss an offensive lineman. I get it. You're missing offensive lineman. We're all missing them. They started Greg Little at tackle. They started Greg Little at tackle yesterday. They didn't have Armstead. Greg Little is not a left tackle. I just want to tell you that. Like, he's not. They started him. And yet they couldn't do anything in the game. They allowed him to run for that. Now, you're telling me they're elite? Give me a break.
Yeah, no, I think the word on the street is out on that Jets defense. It's a good defense, but it's not this Super Bowl championship caliber defense, and that's why they're sitting at home instead of playing here in the month of January. Michael, let's take our final break. On the other side, we'll get to the awards and also give you an update on what's going to be happening later on this week in the podcast. All right, before we get out of here, let's go over some of the awards here, Michael. Who's going on the lamb this week?
Well, I mean, all the teams that don't make the playoffs certainly qualify to go on the lamb, I think. You know,
we'll see those guys
agree
later.
With that? I mean, you know, like
it's been a fun 2022.
Yeah, but I mean, I think your boys. I think Green Bay has to go on the lamb more than ever. You know, I mean, look, you got to do something different here. Like, you've lost 3 playoff games at home. I'm not saying you should fire LaFleur. Big Daddy certainly suggests that. Big Daddy certainly suggests Joe Barry's resignation. He'll accept that at any moment. But I mean, that's embarrassing. And you could say, well, the quarterback didn't play well. That's what we say every time they lose a home playoff game. Aaron Rodgers didn't play good.
Yeah, it's not a good situation in Green Bay. The best game plan of the week, though, the Fred Palermo Award. Who's that going to?
I'm giving it to the Giants. I mean, here they are, the 16-point dog, right? Mm-hmm. They go into Philadelphia. You know, and look, I was telling my cousin Marianne, she's texting me, she's worried. I'm like, relax, Marianne, everything's going to be fine. You know, that they're not even trying. Like, the Giants started nobody. I mean, they're playing like they played Ben Brunson at left tackle. I mean, they didn't even. They're just like nobody. They put Galladay out there because they don't even care whether he plays or not, right? And this game got a little bit too close for comfort, don't you think?
It did.
It got a little too close for comfort. I mean, it's a 22-16 game, you know. And I know Hurts wasn't 100% healthy, and I know he tried to fight his way through it. But give the Giants credit for hanging in there. I thought they did a great job with all their backups, even though, you know, Staley says it's impossible to play backups. They did. I mean, their leading receiver. Can I tell you who the leading receiver was? You never heard of his name before. Cager. He had 8 catches for. I mean. But you know, you can't. You know, you only can manage so many guys.
Brian Daboll's he's my vote for Coach of the Year. I thought he's done.
I mean, I love Daboll,
yeah.
And certainly I think he deserves Coach of the Year. I just think where Tomlin's team was to where it is now with the rookie quarterback is to me. He has my vote, and I get the Dan Campbell love. I get that too.
Mm-hmm. My Dan Campbell ticket. Maybe if he made the playoffs, maybe that had a little bit of life. The David Ogilvy, biggest fraud of the week.
Your boys, the Cowboys. Your boy. There they are. They're frauds. I think they're frauds on defense, too. I think they're fraudulent on defense. I think you can run the ball on them, and I think you can make plays on their secondary. I think it's all about who they're playing.
It's not what I want to hear heading into the playoffs. If you don't know, now you know.
We have 2 10-point dogs as the number 7 seed, and I just truly think Detroit and Pittsburgh would be 2 better 7 seeds.
It's truly disappointing. To be honest, it's truly disappointing that's what we got. But hey, that's what happened.
This is the business we've chosen.
It is, yeah. And you got Seattle beat Detroit earlier this season, and then Miami beat Pittsburgh earlier this season as well. So those teams deserve, I guess, to go to the playoffs. But at their current states, might be a little bit ugly. Obviously, though, today in the league, people call it "quote unquote" Black Monday. And all that stuff. There's going to be head coaching changes that happen. I know the Arizona Cardinals, Michael Bidwell, the owner, is going to be meeting with Cliff Kingsbury later this afternoon. Who knows what's going to come from that meeting? You can kind of read into the tea leaves on that situation there. There's going to be a lot that happens between now and when we tape our next podcast on Thursday. So we're going to wait for all the dust to settle. So I'm sure the news is going to come out. We will have our comments on it, Michael, coming up on Thursday as we also preview the playoff game, Super Wildcard Weekend. But just wanted to put that out there for the people.
I think there's going to be a lot of activity here in the next few days. I think it's going to be a lot of I think you got to monitor that Jets situation. What does does he stand up to the owner? What does he do? I think that's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be what happens in New England. Coach Belichick says he's coming back. What does that mean for the assistants on the staff? I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to transpire. We will be back on Thursday to cover them all. Check out Femi's show or my show, but in the interim.
Yeah,
on VSiN.
We will check all that stuff out, and we'll be making sure to monitor what's going on around the league. Any early thoughts on the playoff games here before we wrap things up real quick?
I think the Giants, a lot of people are going to play the Giants. I think that number will come down lower than 3. I think it will get sink there. I think San Francisco will go higher than 10. I think the reluctance of the Cowboys, they're favored by 3 against the Bucs. I think that'll shrink a little bit based on how they played. And I think the health of the Jaguars might move that number. And a lot of it's going to depend on if Tua plays up there against the Bills. I think that 11 number that's here right now is a little too high.
Yeah, that's too high of Tua.
And Lamar. I mean, we got 2 quarterbacks on the wild card round. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Tua and Lamar. Can Lamar play? I don't know.
I think, and real quick, I think that Huntley sitting yesterday tells me that Lamar's not playing. I think they wanted to protect Tyler Huntley in that situation. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to get Lamar. But if we do, it'll be a competitive game. If we don't, who knows? Who knows what happens if we don't get Lamar? It'll be Tyler Huntley.
Get your handkerchief out. Get your handkerchief out. You and Goulet and Ross, get your vigil going. Go to mass, light candles every week. Pray for those boys.
We got to.
I do. I on Twitter I see when Stephen A. goes berserk on the Cowboy fans. It is really funny shit. It is really good.
They're going to be in Tampa. First Take apparently is going to be in Tampa next Monday to preview. I'm sure they'll have Michael Irvin on the whole bit. So can't wait for that. All right, that does it for this week's edition of the podcast. Thank you to DraftKings. Thank you to VEASAN. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman, on the ones and twos. As always, thank you to you, Michael. And I will talk to you Thursday as we break down the Super Wildcard Weekend games. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VEASAN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VEASAN, wherever you get your podcasts.